Investment Advisory Subcommittee. Thank you, Mr. Zone. It's Wednesday, April 13th, 2022, and we're in the County Admin Building. Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll, please.
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county YouTube page. Calling the roll, Ms. Stevens.
Present.
Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones is absent at the moment. Ms. Anderson.
Present.
Mr. Gary Benjamin.
Present.
Ms. Blackwell. Ms. Blue Donald. Ms. Blue Donald is absent at the moment. Ms. Martin.
Present.
Mr. Noack.
Present.
Mr. Seren.
Present.
Ms. Wheelo. Ms. Wheelo is absent at the moment. We have Keith Benjamin here for her today. And Mr. Zone.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
No, Madam Chair, no one submitted any public comment.
Are there minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance to look at those minutes? Or a majority of y'all? Can I have a motion, please? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes have been approved. We have no special matters referred to committee today. Today is a working discussion. I'm going to invite Frank Ford to the microphone to help lead the conversation. We've been at this approximately 2 years. Isn't that amazing? It just kind of blew by. And of course, the pandemic didn't help because it was all virtual. And so it seemed kind of ephemeral. At any rate, here we are, more than a year later, which was the original goal, that in 1 year we would make some recommendations to council about the best efforts of a lender who is responsible for a majority of, well, for all of our real estate lockbox activities. And so we have had a series of conversations with representatives of Key. I think there are a variety of different styled activists and elected officials in this room. And so I think we've collected some of the best thoughts on how to interact with lenders and a specific lender. And I want to hear what the committee thinks after almost 2 years of working on this. And what we thought was 1 year to come up with some recommendations. So we've had a little extra time. We came up with a matrix with some recommendations in it, gave that to Key Bank. They did take a look at it. We know that for sure. And now it's time to listen to you and try and form a response to council about what you've seen since you were charged by council with the responsibility of making some recommendations on what you saw and maybe how to interact better with lenders on behalf of the constituents that those of us on council are elected to serve. So, Frank, I'm going to ask you to take a lead in the conversation and ask that your peers not hesitate to ask questions or to share thoughts that you have that can help make this stronger. We do have a couple of committee members who wanted to get something done. And so, since we've been The reason for this conversation is at the end of today's session, I'd like to be able to take enough to staff to write something with recommendations in it, maybe with some real teeth in it for the next time we make a selection of any lender who will do business for Cuyahoga County. Frank?
Excuse
So-
me, Madam Chair.
Sorry.
I'd like the record to reflect that Ms. Blue Donald is now in attendance.
Excellent, thank you.
So at the last meeting, I was asked to convene the ad hoc working group that's met a few times over the last year or so. And that working group did meet twice. That's Matt, Sally, Gary, Matt's own, Sally Martin, Gary Benjamin, Barbara Anderson. And we did invite Keisha, why is my mind drawing a blank? Keisha Allen from the Home Repair Resource Center. Keisha's probably watching right now and saying, how could he do that? Anyway, and because we invited her because the Home Repair Resource Center's Challenge Loan Program has not just been one of the 13 commitments. It may have been one of the major commitments that housing advocates and community development advocates were looking for. The product of those two meetings are several documents which I think have been handed out. One is just a simple one-page, a little more than a one-page opening statement that could go to County Counsel outlining a framework for assessing KeyBank. This, of course, obviously is subject to, as you said, Chairwoman, the thoughts of staff and your own thoughts as to what's the best format to give to Council. So this is just a draft. The other document, and maybe the most important one for today, is the matrix that we came up with. And based on input from the working group, this has been revised slightly, and I do want to walk through and show you what that is. The third document is, as we looked at the matrix, as the working group looked at it, we realized that while there are things in there that we can look at the publicly available Home Mortgage Disclosure Act data that the federal government provides, the KeyBank submits to them. We can find things that tell us how is KeyBank performing. But there's actually an even greater number of things in the 13 commitments that is not captured in that publicly available data, things that you really have to ask KeyBank for. And so the other document is a draft of what Chairwoman Stevens could send to KeyBank requesting those other items. If it's okay, I know this is bad form to hand out a document and then read through it, but may I do that since it's not that long and people have not seen this before at all, so I think it's worth.
So I agree with you, it might be bad form, but let's go over this
Okay.
together.
Yeah.
So, because sometimes when we speed read, we miss things.
Yeah. So just the first paragraph, County Council created a reinvestment subcommittee to explore improved lending by financial institutions generally and specifically to monitor KeyBank's performance on community commitments KeyBank made in a 4-year banking services contract with the county. KeyBank's contract with the county began on April 1, 2020 and will continue until March 31, 2024. Given that the contract is now past its halfway point, the subcommittee has significant concerns about the overall progress of the 13 commitments. 2 concerns in particular involve issues that housing and community development advocates have raised with KeyBank for a number of years. Lack of access to home purchase mortgages for $50,000 and less, and KeyBank's dramatic decline in home repair lending over the past 5 years. With respect to the latter, for years, advocates have asked KeyBank to expand its participation in one of the county's most respected home repair programs, the Challenge Loan Fund. And then I go into this a little more detail with these 2 bullets. KeyBank said in the commitments, it said it would participate in the Challenge Home Repair Loan Program and extend it throughout the county. Although KeyBank received a proposal in June 2020 from the Home Repair Resource Center, which was the administrator of the Challenge program, The banking services contract is now half over, and KeyBank has yet to enter into a contract or memorandum of understanding to extend the program countywide. KeyBank said it would help the county address the issue of lack of access to small dollar, $50,000 and less mortgage loans. In 2019, before the banking services contract was signed, KeyBank made 14 home mortgage loans of $50,000 or less, while its peer banks, Huntington and Fifth Third, made 55 and 37 respectively. In 2020, KeyBank made only 5 of these loans. In 2021, KeyBank made only 10 of these loans. A more detailed table tracking KeyBank's performance is attached here as Attachment A. That is the matrix that we've talked about. The Reinvestment Subcommittee proposes that this table be employed to assess KeyBank's performance. The table provides target goals. Let me stop just for a moment. When you get to it, the far right column, which would be the target goals, is currently blank. So at the point where this is sent to County Counsel, presumably we would fill that in, but I have not taken it upon myself to fill that in on your behalf. But it says the Reinvestment Subcommittee, the table provides, or will provide, target goals for each of the 13 commitments in the remaining 2 years of the banking services contract. If KeyBank does not make significant progress towards these goals, the subcommittee recommends the County Council explore alternative banking services arrangements. Continuing on the back, the subcommittee is also submitting 3 additional documents to aid in assessing KeyBank's performance. In October 2021, KeyBank submitted a report on its National Community Benefits Plan and on progress related to the 13 Cuyahoga commitments. The subcommittee has developed supplemental questions County Council should consider with regard to KeyBank's report. That's Attachment B. Now, you don't have that here. That was actually handed out at the last meeting. Maybe we should also go over those too, but although we are probably going to have our hands full going through the matrix, but we can revisit that. Next paragraph, a 5-year review of home mortgage lending by KeyBank and 3 of its peer banks was prepared by the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. That's Attachment C, which is also, I guess, not attached. Although I think that I've presented that so many times to different people, and you've probably all seen it. It was last November, but we can certainly get that to you. And then finally, while some of KeyBank's community commitments involve data that is publicly available, that is the home mortgage disclosure data I referred to, other commitments involve data that must be provided by KeyBank. Attachment D is a request to KeyBank to disclose the additional data needed to adequately assess KeyBank's performance, and that is the other document that is a draft. Why don't we stop there? Again, this is a first draft, which I'm assuming could be considerably changed at the pleasure of this body and staff and the chairwoman.
Mr. Zim.
I think it would be helpful if Mr. Ford walks through the matrix and explains the various columns and why we inserted the various years.
Yep. Thank you. If that's okay, I will do that. So you, I believe, have seen an earlier version of this document. It's not substantially different, but the first column on the left is, in fact, exactly the same as it has been for months. That column lists the 13 commitments as they were stated in the Exhibit A or Attachment A of the Banking Services Contract. What I've done is I just took the liberty of highlighting in red some keywords to draw your attention. And then the other thing, and I think I might have talked about this once before also, at the bottom of each commitment in the blue font is, it's not a quantifiable, measurable number. It's did something happen and when did it happen? So in the commitment, KeyBank refers to a loan loss guarantee fund. And so the question is, did they implement it and when? Would be something that we would want to make note of and County Council would want to make note of. So that's the format for the first column. The second column I believe is also unchanged. So let me back up a step and say that most of these, in each of these 13 commitments, KeyBank is saying they will do something, but they're not necessarily providing a quantifiable, measurable benchmark that we can all look to. They're not doing that. But there's nothing that prevents this subcommittee or county council from deciding you want to adopt some metrics, and that's what we've done in the second column. That since the first item, for example, talks about loans 50,000 or less, it makes sense that the metric would be, well, how many loans in that category did KeyBank make? The box under it is a slight variation, whereas the first one is available from the publicly accessible home mortgage disclosure data. The second one is not, and that is where KeyBank specifically references their key community mortgage program. The HMDA data, HMDA data, does not distinguish that. So we really need to ask KeyBank, tell us, how many of those loans did you make? The next three columns are variations on what was here before, what I thought would make sense. And I'm saying because this is what I proposed to the working group. The working group has seen this twice, and so I guess I could say we, the working group, we're comfortable with this. To put in the last 3 years as what was the actual number that they did in each of these categories. And so actual 2019 is pre-banking services contract being executed. So it's the benchmark before the contract. 2020 is the first year of the contract. 2021 is the second year. And then on the far right would be proposed target goals to suggest or to ask, request from KeyBank for each of the next 2 years. And I'm assuming, likely, well, let's just take a look at the first one, for example. If KeyBank did 14 in 2019, then they only did 5 in 2020. They went up a little to 2021 to 10. But then looking at Huntington did 55 and 37, and Fifth Third did 37 in 2019. Huntington did 50 and Fifth Third did 17. Huntington 38 and Fifth Third 15. You know, I would suggest that since KeyBank is the largest deposit holder in Cuyahoga County, larger than either Huntington or Fifth Third, Key is, you know, it's not unreasonable to suggest that they should match or come close to matching what two of their peer banks did. We could also look at PNC. I kept this simple, actually. We could make it more detailed if you want me to. But that's the framework of how this is laid out. Any questions before I go on?
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Frank, for this information. I just have a question, just in a sense. I'm sure this data exists somewhere. I'm sure I've reviewed it at some point in time in one of the aforementioned attachments, but just also the comparison, because we are looking strictly at numbers of loans, maybe not percentages. So for instance, if I don't know how many applicants have applied to KeyBank for $50,000 and less compared to a Huntington and Fifth Third, because could this be I know it's not, but is 14 for 2019 100% of the people that actually applied, where Huntington, it's actually 50% of the people. So I think that kind of matters as well, not strictly looking at the number, but also maybe a percentage to actually also work on the targets for 22 and 23.
And I'm pretty sure that in the study that was released in November, I'm pretty sure I have that in there, so it's accessible. One thing to consider this question is very relevant, particularly when you're talking about access to loans for racial minorities. Did they access loans at an equal percentage as the whites who applied for them? But even if the number of applicants was low, the other side to consider is, to what extent did KeyBank or any bank actually do sufficient outreach to bring in the applicants? So there's a number of things that can be revealed from that. I'm I'm prepared to make more work for myself. But actually, most of the work has been done. It's a question of how do you incorporate it into this document, or is it an adjunct, or is it something separate? But I can find that, and I can get it to the subcommittee members. I can get it before we meet again. I can email it around.
That would be great.
Yeah, I can do that. And then from there, you consider, is it appropriate or not? Do you want to incorporate it? Yeah.
I think we might, because that would be something that I would say if I was a lender. Well, I only had 25 applicants in comparison to Huntington having 100 applicants.
And why is that? Right. Yeah.
So that leaves us with a legitimate question.
Yeah.
Why did you only have 25 applicants? Is your staff spending enough time in the venues in the core cities neighborhoods or in the inner ring suburban neighborhoods? If the answer is no, then we have how many hours do you have a loan officer is there a key at the corner of Libby? Thank you. Exactly. So if there's a key there, is there ever a loan officer there? Oh, that's not a good answer. So those are the kinds of things that we may, in essence, also want to have as secondary questions here. Where are you targeting your staff, and how are they getting access to our residents? Because if you're not going out into our neighborhoods, you can't possibly lend to our people. An advertisement in the middle of the night to the insomniacs, of which I have become one, is not the best way to market your loan programs. It may be the cheapest way, but it is not the best way to increase your numbers.
And it certainly, if someone were to say, well, the need isn't there, then how did Huntington do 55 in 2019? There's a need there.
And I think the need is greater than the 55 that Huntington serves.
Probably true, yeah.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Frank. This is an excellent report, and thank you, Liana, for bringing that, because it puts the whole picture together. One of the things, having spent many years working, dating myself. Oh, I'm dating myself because it was called Ameritrust.
Oh, yes.
When I worked there, and now it's the 9. It's funny because for one of our anniversaries, the kids reserved the room, and it was kind of on the same floor that my office used to be on when I worked at Cleveland Trust. But we maybe, when we drill down that way, a lot of it's because of the way they're compensated. That plays a big part on the outreach and the efforts made among the loan officers. Perhaps it could be the difference in way they're compensated at, Huntington and Fifth Third. There's a bonus structure for some, and so, if we're going to dig deep, then maybe we can not. I'm not asking you to volunteer for more work, but that could be one of the reasons there is such a big difference in numbers.
Well, I'd ask Frank and Sally and Barbara or Mayor Soren to think back with me. We attended a meeting at Key, and they brought that up themselves, and they indicated to us that they were having some compensation conversations with the team of folks who did this activity. So they were aware that they might need to provide additional incentives. And while we don't want to dig that deeply into their business, we do want them to figure out a way to increase the outcomes. And I thought I shared something like that with them. You're right, we don't need to drill that deeply into your business, but we do want you to increase your outcomes. And the response felt like an affirmation that they wanted to discuss their own business internally and that they would figure out ways to increase the numbers. Mayor Soren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm thinking about recruiting customers. And, Key, like other banks, They have a marketing budget. Obviously, I think their marketing is intended to maximize their profit, and that is probably the process and the priority that they have established and experienced for their entire existence as a corporation. And so there might be some way, and this I'm thinking from the city perspective, and maybe some other communities can participate in something like this instead of relying on them to execute a recruitment strategy that doesn't necessarily fall in line with their strategy as a company. Maybe it's possible for them to provide some funding from their marketing budget for communities like ours to recruit and reach out to our residents in the places where we know they are, and, you know, provide funding, which could potentially benefit them as well as sort of a charitable contribution to the cities, to a program that would allow us to reach those people that maybe they're having trouble reaching as well.
So, Mayor, are you suggesting that one of the footnotes to our metrics is a couple of recommendations from members of this committee of how they could increase their outreach to differing types of residents in differing locations?
Absolutely.
If I could expound on that, on April 27th, we're having our annual Community Resource Fair, and we're intentional on who we invite to that fair. Middlefield Bank is coming to the fair. I think a lot of you may know Christopher Hess. We've got the sewer department. I mean, so we really just we're turning the gym of a local church into a resource fair. Of course, the treasurer's office will be there to help people get on payment plans, to make sure they know about the homestead exemption. And so we've done this since I've been in office for 7 years. And Key Bank is the one that always got to call 4 or 5 times to get there, where we've got, was it Lakewood Federal? That's like banging on my door, when can we come, when can we come? And so we have to do that work as elected officials in our communities to bring them to our people and centralize them. We're doing that marketing for them. When we do the flyer, you know, we'll put their logo, we provide the place. I'm providing pizza because there has to be incentive because it's after work. We're going to, of course, have someone help with the children. We partition a part of that gym off so people that are delinquent can have some privacy. We have the legal aid, and we do this once a year, and it's well attended, to speak to your marketing point. But we're doing the work. You would think that the outreach would be on the other side, but we've spent weeks on building that, and of course you guys are coming. Thank you for participating. I really appreciate it. So we're doing that in our individual communities, but I think it's something that it should be, you know, maybe a template that we could all be doing, and eventually they will cover the cost. Like, I am buying the pizza, you know, but we're hoping that home improvement, I've said this probably too many times, but it's really something that's important to me. Mayor's Court's right behind my office, and most of the people in my mayor's court are there for housing violations. I'm just exasperating the problem, right? I mean, they're there because I sent a code enforcement officer, the steps are falling, and because the neighbor said it's an eyesore, and then they can't afford it, and then there's a court. I mean, it's just, so I don't want to be the person that's always bringing the hammer down. I also want to be the person that brings the solutions, so these partnerships help us with that. But this resource fair that I've done for years, I have to do the outreach, and it's so silly because I'm bringing in the customers, I'm bearing the expense. You know, for 3 weeks, we've lived and breathed this, as I keep going over every detail. Do we get this person? We get this person. We got the library coming. Most people want to come, but Key Bank has been reluctant. And I'll just say this. I went in that branch to refinance our home. No one ever called me back. No one ever called me back. I ended up going with Dollar Bank. So, and here's where our deposits are. And I didn't tell them who I was. Why should I? But I never got a call back. So that is really that's the truth that's happening. The last thing I'll say on this subject, because I don't want to monopolize, but I really do want to bring home the problem and illuminate it and tell you what we're doing to overcome these issues. Because our people want loans. A lady called me today that paid cash for her house, and she's redoing her kitchen and adding a room because rates are so low, because she finally has the equity in her home, and people are excited. But we're helping them find banks to finance this dream kitchen she's told me all about, and I got excited as she did.
You having kitchen envy, Mayor?
I got mine done 3 months ago, and it's pretty darn amazing. It's pretty darn amazing. It took me years, but so I was just saying, get it done, because I come in and I go,
My wife's not listening.
yeah, I come in now and I'm like, this is my kitchen finally. But there's a need there, and people, she said, I'm here to stay, and people, when the market was down, were able to pay cash for these homes and now build enough equity to do some other things, but they can't find anyone to help them realize their dreams. So the work we're doing here is important. It keeps people in their homes. It helps with the value appreciation. It then goes, if they do the right thing on the property record card, so we're able to really capture that improvement for the triennial and sexennial. So it's just so many layers to this, and it's important what we're doing to get them to make these loans. It's important for them, what they're doing and you guys are doing, to then help them make it their dream home and stay where they are and stabilize neighborhoods and address poverty and create generational wealth. There's about 5 or 6 steps if I kind of built this when I look at it holistically. So we're looking at this level, but there are real stories behind this. And I'm telling you, if I did not do the annual resource fair that I spend 2 months on because I just get crazy about it, these people would not be approached. They wouldn't have someone, and I'm bringing the loan officers to them. And so I'm excited to be on this panel, and I know I'm going to say it, guys, I really hope we get something done. Thank you.
Yeah, I have that note written behind your name now. So,
Well, amongst the things that you said that I really, really stuck in my head was when you said, they never call me back. That's one story from one person. How many other residents of Maple Heights or any other community might have called KeyBank and didn't? The word gets around too. Why bother applying? Why reach out? So, but I think, yeah, these are great suggestions. If they already have a budget, which they should for marketing, then they should think about how they deploy that budget. Yeah.
yes, Mr. Benjamin.
Mayor Saren's comment.
Excuse me, Mr. Benjamin, is your microphone on?
Thank you. Mayor Saren's comment, I think could be something that we can definitely move forward and explore. It's not unlike what we did when the First Suburbs Consortium established the HELP Loan Program 20 years ago with the assistance of the county treasurer at the time. There was, through the First Suburbs Consortium, marketing dollars that went on behalf of the communities to promote the program to our residents. So it's certainly, certainly something that makes sense, and that if they're not willing to market it and outreach to our residents in our neighborhoods, we could do it on our own.
So in terms of how to proceed, I was thinking the far right column is left blank right now, but it should be filled in. And I know we called this a working session. I do think we should go through each one of these 13 to get a sense of what is it saying, but do we also have time to come up with the proposed target, or do you want the working group to go back and do that and come back? What's your...
We have, we've traditionally had this meeting for only an hour. We ran over to 10 minutes longer, but we rarely do a 2-hour session. And my thought is that for us to come up with numbers for each of these would be a longer amount of time.
I'm afraid it would be, but the
So
working
what
group could do that.
I think that we invite everyone to participate in the working group.
Yeah, sure.
As opposed to just the working group this
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
And so if you are able and available, you'll get a notice from the working group. And then you can, because it's handled virtually most
Yeah.
times, so then you can squeeze that in among the 11 dozen other things you have to do.
Yeah,
Because I don't think I invited anybody who has nothing to do
yeah.
to participate in this committee. So why don't we do that for coming up with the numbers?
Okay.
I had hoped that Key would come up with their own numbers. That would have made our lives better. So I'm hoping that they're probably watching us, or someone will watch us since this is being recorded, and maybe they will come up with their own numbers before we're finished with ours. That would be wonderful.
Madam
Mr.
Chair,
Zhang?
can I just ask a
I'm sorry.
quick question?
Yes, Mrs. Anderson.
Has Key Bank responded in any significant way to any of the numbers or any of the questions that
We
have
actually
been
met
asked to
with
her?
them
Okay.
after we did, after the second draft, was it, Frank?
I think so.
And we sat down with them for a little over an hour. They were very professional and polite. But they said my memory is that they had to have conversations with their team internally about what their production could and would be and how they deployed people differently. As Mr. Ford indicated, we have always been big supporters of the Challenge program and what it does in communities like Cleveland Heights and what it's capable of doing in a bigger circle. There was a proposal that was verbalized between Key staff and county staff that work for the executive, but I don't believe we saw anything in writing other than what the director of development summarized in an email to me. Does anyone remember anything? Frank, did I forward a copy of that email to you?
I'm not remembering. You probably did. Unfortunately, I'm not remembering.
So I know that staff, was that just there was an email from the director to me, if I remember correctly, Mr. McClear. And, okay, I may not have sent it to
Okay.
you. I may have only sent it to Trevor.
All right.
That's sometimes a habit. Council just forwards it to staff automatically. So of major concern is, while there is a desire on their part, at least articulated, to do something with the Challenge program, which was something I think if ever ask at this table, I thought everyone had the Challenge grant in their top 3.
Yeah.
Because I know that's a habit. I
Yes.
always ask people, what are your top 3 things to get
Yes.
done? Yes.
Madam Chair, I just have a question, and perhaps Mr. Nowak could answer it. I believe they've issued an RFQ, request for
The
or
county has.
RFP, but we have some fundamental concerns as to whether that actually hits the mark with what we know to be the integrity of the Challenge Loan Program. We're worried that they're repackaging it as something a little bit different that isn't going to have the same impact.
I haven't had a chance to read the request for proposals. Did you, Mr. Nowak, have a chance to read it, or someone on your team? Because he's so much bigger.
Sure. So there was a RFP put out by the county, I don't remember which number it was, that essentially had 4 home repair components in it. One of which was an emergency repair component. Madam Chair, Mr. Hurdig?
Mr. Hurdig is here to speak for himself. Is that why you're here, Mr. Hurdig? Okay.
Can I comment before anyone
Okay.
else jumps in?
Hold. If you could take a seat at the table but
Oh.
not speak yet.
Frank, I'm fully vaccinated.
Okay.
Okay, well, so am I.
Kevin, did you have one more thing to say? Before we do that, Mr. Zone would like to make a comment.
Just a couple of comments. So first of all, to everyone on this matrix, I think it makes sense. Some of them might be numbers, some of them might be percentages. So all 13 needs to be looked at, and I think in some instances it makes more sense to be a percent than an actual number. Just comment, and then just in terms of process, it might be helpful if maybe Ashley could assist and send a doodle poll to everyone to solicit a date as opposed to asking the subcommittee to do it just for efficiency would be my recommendation. Thank you.
That can be done. Okay. As we were saying, thank you for coming down and joining us, Mr. Hurtig. There was a proposal on the challenge grant, and it was summarized by Mr. Hurtig for me, just to get my attention. Just had a few things going on. And he did come to this committee and make a summary presentation, but we don't have anything in writing to either pick apart or say, yeah, we completely love that. Because there is the possibility that we could love every piece of it or love 3/4 of it and have some recommendations for change. So, Mr. Hurtig, you issued a request for proposals from the county. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
So thanks, Chair. Just to let everyone know the status of our work, as Councilwoman Stevens said, we put out an RFP for the nonprofit part of this work. It actually was a pretty broad RFP for home repairs that covers not only a nonprofit to be involved in the challenge program, but also the more traditional directly funded nonprofit home repair program. So it's a big RFP. One part of it does talk specifically about working with the bank on the challenge program. That RFP closes April 21st, and we'll probably need about 10 days for the review internally before we're ready to recommend awards on the RFP. Again, it covers several things, so it won't be just this, it'll be other awards as well. We have the written agreement with Key Bank for the loan loss reserve just about finished. There was some change they wanted to make near the end, and our attorney in the law department's looking at it. We told our attorney it's not a super rush because we're going to introduce both together. But I think the bottom line is the plan is for both items to come before council for full hearing together, so that the general path would be once the procurement work is done, we have a procurement system for the nonprofit awards. It would then be introduced to council, first reading, referral to committee.
So we'd see this in June.
Most likely, yes.
At the earliest.
Yes.
Because you need at least,
might be May, but most likely June, yes.
You just need time to review the responses if there's more than one.
Yes.
Okay. So, I'm Sally. Sorry, Ms. Martin, did you have a question?
Yes, through the chair to Mr. Hurtig. In the RFQ, because I haven't seen it, how does it define the challenge loan program? Is it departing from the way that the Home Repair Resource Center currently runs it?
So thank you, Director. Wow, be able to call you Director. But very seriously, first of all, it's a public document. So what I would like to do with the chair's permission is get it to council staff so it can be just circulated to everyone on the committee, subcommittee. And I don't want to speak completely from memory, but the effort that Sarah Parks Jackson and I made was to be pretty accurate about how the program is going to work with the loan loss reserve along the same lines as I testified about previously. So we tried to get as accurate as we could. We also, before we issued the RFP, when we were allowed to talk to people about it, we talked with the director of the Home Repair Resource Center. And of course, we can't talk to her now during the review period, but we did talk to her about it. So we made every effort to clearly write out in the RFP what we were trying to do.
Okay.
When would we be able, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, when would we be able to receive that public document that you're talking about?
The RFP?
Yeah, the RFP.
I'll send it to Ashley today.
So we could have it, Ashley
Okay.
could send it out first thing tomorrow morning.
Sure.
She's usually pretty good about that. It's me that she has to wait on. If you're wondering why things come out slowly, it's not her, it's me.
Okay. So, Chair, I don't mean to intrude on your hearing. I just
Oh, yes,
wanted
you
to come down
did, but
for that
it was
information.
good. We appreciated that. That's the beauty of being in one building, that you can get here, and we don't have to wander if you were interested in something. You came and shared your perspective, and that was great. Do not hesitate to come and do that again, especially with this committee.
Thank you.
Any other questions before Mr. Hurdig leaves? Mr. Nowak?
I just like to concur, Mr. Hurdig. When I read the RFP, there were 4 components to it, the 4th of which was, I believe, the challenge loan, or the piece that would apply. I specifically put in my notes when I think this is related to the challenge loan program. So I thought in the description, it was pretty clear that it was somehow, it was intended to fund that program or something like it.
Thank you.
I'm curious, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I'm curious as to what were those 4 components? I know you mentioned emergency. Do you recall the other 3?
Again, I'll speak from memory, but we'll get the full document out shortly. Essentially, what Sarah and I tried to describe was several different ways a homeowner could be eligible for assistance. There's the traditional community development block grant program funding where it's income-based, but then there's additional funding that's being made available due to Cuyahoga County's receipt of American Rescue Plan funds, and that has somewhat broader eligibility. We're able to get into things such as being a senior or living in a distressed community as well as just income.
And we were able to look at higher income levels, which was incredibly important to me, so that we didn't end up with you had to be in total poverty. Sometimes families, through no fault of their own, have large medical bills, residual payments for college loans, issues with the family. You never know. And so, was it 200% that it went up to?
Again, Chair,
You don't
I don't
remember.
want to
Okay.
misspeak, but we'll get that out to everyone shortly.
Right.
And it'll be in there.
So I was really pleased about when my conversation, because as I said, I didn't look at it. In my conversation with Sarah, she talked about that it would allow for higher income levels, and that was especially important to me. Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Chair.
Ms. Blue Donald.
Madam Chair, to Frank and everyone in the room, this is not a reflection, my comments of people in the room or even the working group, but just a couple comments before we convene again and go over this document. For surely, everyone in this room may not be able to participate in that working group session. So if there are any annual targets or, if this has changed, if we can please see that before this meeting, that'd be great, just to make sure that we can utilize the hour time efficiently. Also, so if I say that I'm a little disheartened about KeyBank's participation in this, I think it's really integral to concluding and formulating this document, in the sense of I see a couple of columns that need information from KeyBank. I don't even know how, we can set a target without that information, but also keeping in mind that some things have come up here today, or even when we talk about percentages or numbers, it doesn't, matter. Just even a conversation with them for them to be able to explain. I'm not saying that there is really a reason why some of these numbers are so low, but to have that conversation, and even for that to go to our maybe further recommendations of how maybe they can get the numbers up or what have you, what we could see as a success in these community commitments. But I think what is really important to having this document be concluded is a conversation with Key at the table, to say, yes, no, maybe so, this is why, and to be able to fill in the other categories. So I just wanted to kind of put that comment on the record. Thank you.
So, I'm sorry, Ms. Martin.
Well, one of the things I was going to say about that, and we have had a couple meetings with them, and I think one of the frustrations that we felt is that they want to take it to a 30,000-foot level view and not a Cuyahoga County view. And so I think that the subcommittee, or the working group of the subcommittee, keeps trying to drill down and make it more specific so that you can't evade answering the Cuyahoga County question. So that's been correct me if I'm wrong, the frustration for some time and why we're trying to tailor this more to our market and sub-markets here.
I'm just not sure we're going to get a specific response. And so, for those of you who know me, after I ask a question 3 times, being the big baseball fan that I am, I'm done. And so it's time for the report to be formulated. And if Key is desirous of giving us some additional information, this is the time for them to do it, because we are working toward giving a report so that the council body can form an opinion and do something in the way it asks for proposals for work that involve banks in this county. So we have had an existing relationship with Key. It's not that they're a bad lender. It is that as a leader in this county, elected by a specific number of constituents, it is my goal to help foster relationships with the folks who have received large deposits of our money, from the folks who have generated most of those deposits to have better opportunities to take care of their homes, to take care of their businesses, to take care of their children, and to lead this county into a more productive future. If this is not the way to do it, then we will figure it out. But I want more dialogue with more of the lenders so that we see better business product in this county. And so we've asked and asked and asked, and now it's time to tell the county council through this advisory committee what we believe is right, wrong, and what are good recommendations for how things can be done better. So, if anybody's listening out there, please send your recommendations to us. You can email to our staff, tmcclear@cuyahogacounty.us, or you can email to me, clstevens, STEPHENS, @cuyahogacounty.us. Between staff and myself, we should be able to figure out what you're saying to us, and it can have a role as we come to closure with this. I think that what our goal is in the next couple of months to have a presentation before the full Community Development Committee and then to the council. Lending is too important for us not to have taken this seriously. And as I said, the agreement was entered into over 2 years ago now, and so it's now time for us to opine. And I want to do that in a structured manner, and so this is it. We won't cross any lines, but we will tee this up for a conversation and ask all banks to do more in Cuyahoga County. Any other conversation before I close for the day? Miscellaneous business? Hearing none. Meeting is adjourned at 3:00.